Welcome back to Breakfast Central. If you're just tuned in, well, you are in time for a very important conversation we're about to have as regards Nigeria's oil and gas sector. And we're joined by a key stakeholder in the sector, exploring the journey. It's important that people who have gone ahead share their stories, the challenges, and the journey so far, as it does inspire the ones who are coming behind. Osalge, I'm sure that you agree with this as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And there's so much to unpack and so much to unravel with the whole conversation. There's a lot of history also that needs to be brought to bear, and of course looking at where this conversation is going to be taking us, and where we currently are today. In the news, of course, you heard that Bolt and Uber drivers, e-hailing drivers, are going on strike, and this is mostly because of where we currently are with Nigeria's oil and gas sector, subsidy removal, and some of all of that. So there's so much that needs to be, of course, unpacked, and we hope that we can do as much as possible in the next few minutes. But this morning we are joined by someone who has been a major player in Nigeria's oil and gas sector for decades. He, of course, has a long history, starting as a geologist, I believe, and then, of course, moving into the oil and gas sector fully. Would say good morning and welcome to Austin Avuru. Good morning and thanks for joining us. It's a huge pleasure having you here in our studios.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
There's so much to talk about. I don't know if we have the time for as much as we want to unpack this morning, but we, of course, would dig into the most important, I believe. So let's first of all, understand you and your journey so far. What would you say it has been like? What would you say for you has been the most interesting part of your journey?
The later part of my journey, I would say, has been most exciting because that's the part that my entrepreneurship skills, fortunately, came to bear. The first 20 years of my journey, I was essentially staff, working in 2-3 key places, 12 years in an NNPCL, 10 years with a Nigerian independent, before going ahead to then co-found at our first oil and gas operating company, Platform Petroleum. Co-founded that and ran it for 8 years, and then moved on to co-found Seplat Energy and also ran it as founding CEO for 10 years. So yes, you can divide my oil and gas history into two. The first part where I honed my skills as a staff, and the second part where I honed my skills as an entrepreneur in the sector.
And everyone who has read your story or who has heard your name would give you exceptional commendations for what Seplat has been able to achieve since its founding in 2010. I believe it's still the only company who's on the Nigerian Stock Exchange and London Stock Exchange. So that really tells a story about what was built in Seplat. But people would also argue that it was boardroom politics and some of that sort that, of course, led to where we currently are with Seplat, with, of course, you stepping aside, for Seplat. So let's talk about that. You also detailed it in your book, one of the books we're going to be talking about. I think I saw it in page 200 and 201, I think, of that book, which was the initial stage or the foundation of what led to, of course, what eventually happened. So let's talk about what really happened and what led to court cases and the likes.
These are very recent happenings. I retired from Seplat as CEO at the end of July 31st of 2020, almost 3 years ago. And I gave notice of my retirement on August 1, 2016. So I gave the board 4 years notice that I was retiring. So I really didn't retire or left the board because of boardroom politics. No. As a matter of fact, it was testimony to the governance structure we had in place, that the board had 4 years within which to plan my succession and recruit my replacement. And that was why I gave that much notice. After I left, I retired, I still retain a seat on the board because the group I represent has a shareholding level that entitles us to sit on the board. The recent things you have been reading about Seplat only relate to some disagreement between a key founding shareholder and some members of the board over issues that both sides disagree. But again, it is testimony to the governance structure we have in place to established in Seplat that in spite of all of those acrimonious things, The company runs on the structure that we built, and you can see that issues are being resolved legally. And in the end, the company, as a company, as an E&P company, has not been affected in its performances by those wranglings. So yes, you see those boardroom skirmishes here and there from time to time in a company. But if you have a robust, resilient corporate governance structure that you built around the company, those rumblings will not affect the performance. And that's what you're seeing with Seplat today.
All right, let's bring in Olive to the conversation.
All right, it's been an interesting journey so far. We thank you very much for sharing that with us. But now let's take a look at your journey as an author. You have 3 books to your credit. We have My Entrepreneurship Journey and Politics, Economics and the Nigerian Petroleum Industry, all written by you. And we also have Austin Avuru, A Safe Pair of Hands, and this one was written by the duo of Bejo Akonde and Tony Khan. But what we did see, of course, a lot of us followed the story of the injunction that was issued. Thankfully, it's been resolved, but we'd like you to lead us through the journey towards, the injunction and the drama that ensued during that time frame and where we are now.
Well, the book, My Entrepreneurship Journey, in fact, when you read, I had to write a 2-page introduction, specifically to warn readers that this book is like live drama. It's not fiction. It takes you through, as frankly as I could, my journey through the oil and gas world as an entrepreneur. And I took the case of the roles I played, and of course those roles I played with other actors in co-founding and running 2 oil and gas businesses that are still there. Everybody talks about Seplat Energy. That's the one that is listed. That's the one that is in public domain. Platform Petroleum is still there, has been in production as a marginal field operator for 17 years. It's still there with its entire governance structure that was set up. So it's my journey through those 2 institutions that I detailed in the book. What it means is that there are real human beings who participated in this journey with me at various stages. And I was quite open in detailing my understanding of how that journey took us. And so because there are real human beings who are mentioned, you would imagine, and I warned in the introduction, that a couple of them could actually be angry about the roles that I think they played in this journey. And so yes, one or 2 of them expressed that anger. One of them in particular expressed that anger, even before reading the book, funny enough. By bringing, by getting that injunction to stop us from unveiling the book in August last year. But we've since made up. First of all, the injunction has been vacated. But even at that, my relationship with the person in question has returned to complete normal, and he has read the book, satisfied with the book. Of course, he will have one or 2 issues to take up, but none that is a deal breaker. And so, so we're back. The book is, it's available to all readers. It's on Amazon. It's in all bookshops. It's a book that I think I am proud of because I was bold enough to explicitly lay out in the corporate world, not just in Seplat or anywhere else that you see an attempt to institute proper corporate governance. What I detailed in the book are the hurdles that you must face. And how do you navigate those hurdles? Because everybody talks about corporate governance, It's nice to talk about. But if you know the level of sacrifice as a CEO and the amount of discipline that is required to institute proper governance structures and abide by them, then you will understand what I'm describing in the book.
It's a whole lot, and everyone I think is certain that you have, of course, in the decades that you've been in that industry, have developed and trained yourself, and also have able to pull hundreds of people along. So there are 3 different books: My Entrepreneurship Journey by Austin Avuru. There's also this one, which is Austin Avuru, A Safe Pair of Hands. This is for our viewers, and of course these are all available currently in bookstores across Lagos, and I'm hoping across the continent at some point. There's also this one, which is Politics, Economics, and the Nigerian Petroleum Industry, 3rd edition. So I think this is what we should focus on now. because of the different levels of controversy that we're currently dealing with.
Yes.
In Nigeria, the petrol subsidy conversation. Many would argue that Nigeria's oil and gas industry has been mismanaged for so long. It has maybe been mismanaged since 1950 or 1958 rather, till date. Where do you think we have mostly gotten it wrong? And would you agree with those who say that the subsidy removal by the current administration may be the wrong step at this time?
It's interesting. The book, the other one, the Politics, Economics, and the Nigerian Petroleum Industry, which in fact is a compilation of 74 essays written over a 30-year period from 1992. As far back as 1996, I had started discussing things like privatizing the refineries, making them efficient, and deregulating product prices. So if you ask me honestly today, the removal of subsidy, which has just happened, is 15 years late coming. Diesel, which is what fires the trucks and the buses that carry the ordinary poor, because everybody uses a so-called poor man as the excuse for doing the wrong thing. Kerosene that the poor man uses for cooking has been deregulated for the past 10 years. You buy at regular price. Diesel that the so-called Nigerian moldwares use.
And all the companies, the
industries. And all the companies,
and
yes, it's been deregulated. But we hang on to petrol, and it's been one huge black box, almost a scam, as some people will call it, for so long. Listen, you cannot be borrowing $2.5 billion a year to fund your budget and spend $3 billion a year on subsidy. It just does. So you're actually borrowing to fund subsidy. You don't run an economy that way. It should have been removed 10, 15 years ago. It usually takes a lot of political courage, but it is something that has to be done, managed properly. It's one of those structural deformities that you must take out of the economy if you want to move forward. And that's the truth about it. There are pains associated with it. There are pains associated with removal of any subsidy. Subsidy on electricity tariff has been quietly removed over the past 2 years. People don't notice. But if you want to honestly manage the economy and move it forward, there are some of those structural abnormalities that you must take out. And this is one of them.
Yeah. I think we can bring in Olive. Okay, well, just, before she steps in. So those who are currently complaining, and, saying that it is poorly timed, because every, person who in the last election was contesting for the presidential seat had their own thoughts on subsidy. But of course, there was, for example, Labour Party's candidate who said that he wanted to do it strategically. It wasn't going to be like an immediate thing. He had laid out the, processes through which it will be done. So do you think that maybe that's what should have been done instead of, just a straight announcement that subsidy is gone?
Honestly, there is no good time to inflict pain. That's really, it's like Mr. Obi's analogy, Peter Obi's analogy. You are going to have your tooth extracted. It is true, you can numb the place so that there isn't too much pain before you extract it, or extract it and treat the pain later, whichever way. There is no good time to inflict pain. When you take subsidies that the ordinary people have been enjoying, you take it away, that is pain you're inflicting on ordinary people. It's how you manage that pain that is the issue. But you must treat the core problem, yes. Okay,
well, I'm sure the current administration will figure out ways, to either numb the pain or, tell everyone to manage it.
Yeah.
Of course, one of the things I think Peter Obi also said is that one of the, problems Nigerians have is that the government tells people to sacrifice, to suffer and sacrifice, and things will be better. But unfortunately, things continue to get worse. So there's that part. But I also want you to speak on, in the oil and gas industry, I think I mentioned this earlier, that people would say that it has been fraudulent for so long. There have been so many things that have been shrouded in secrecy. Last year, we spoke about oil that was being stolen, pipes that were connected to ships in different parts of the Niger Delta that were stealing Nigeria's oil. How badly do you think we have fared in that regard of managing the oil and gas industry well enough, of being able to use our gas, more effectively, of being able to manage the amount of oil that is drilled and produced every single day in Nigeria?
Let me not seem to be defending an industry I've worked in for 42 years, but I also say this: the general public, usually is unfair to the industry for this reason. As you said, so much of our activities in the oil and gas industry are so badly understood, or not understood at all by the public, including people in very high places, and therefore, what they see, for instance, the entire gamut of the oil and gas industry, what the ordinary person sees daily is how you can get fuel at the gas station.
Yes.
All the activities leading to that fuel getting to the gas station, he doesn't understand it. So whatever information you feed him or half-truth you feed him with about how the rest of the industry is managed, his anger might just derive from how he gets or does not get gas at the gas station. So the point I'm making is, it's an industry that is misunderstood, not understood, and therefore most of the news coming out of the industry will only be news because you are illustrating things that have been badly done. Haven't said that. The industry since 1960, 1958, the upstream side, that is just the search for and production of crude oil and natural gas, has been run essentially by 6 multinationals for the past 60 years. And run efficiently by them to their international standards, supervised by government, NNPC, and the regulator, DPR, which is now NUPRC. The reason you're getting so much bad news in the past 10 years is these multinationals, after 50 years, the basin is getting matured, they're gradually moving away. And they're being replaced by the Nigerian independents that don't have the level of experience and the level of experience that these multinationals are. They're still, they're still almost like in the learning stage. So there are hiccups. You are now seeing that in the past 10 years, there's been rapid decline in spending, in capital spend in the industry, leading to steady decline in the production, our volume of production. We had reached 2.2 million barrels a day without anybody asking how that was happening effortlessly. Yeah. We've been down at some point to under 1 million barrels per day. Now, add all of this to the militancy that has bedeviled the Niger Delta in the past 15 years, which in itself was a result of poor political management of the economy itself. So the Niger Delta didn't see what they had benefited from the industry over the previous 40 years. So this militancy started as a response, not to the poor management of the oil and gas industry, but as a response to the fact that their citizens didn't see what had benefited. So you add this to this transition period where there are inadequacies in managing the upstream to the point of getting your optimum production, so everything has cascaded to a point now where it looks, as you pointed out, that the industry has been so badly managed that we don't know what we're doing. But really, these are the systematic problems that have to be tackled.
Yeah.
That's where we are today.
Okay, I think we're going to bring in Olive now to also throw in something.
Right now, still looking at the oil and gas sector, I mean, you've given us a deeper insight and perspective into this industry as a stakeholder there. But I did read a report on Nairametrics where they had explained that between 2010 and 2020, NNPCL had spent 4.8 trillion naira in maintaining state-owned refineries. Now, there's also been calls by experts, industry experts, that local refineries be activated. And some of the beliefs would be that having these local refineries activated would reduce our over-dependence on fuel importation. I'd like you to speak to some of the challenges that our refineries have experienced and what the way forward is to ensure that we can find some form of balance in the oil and gas sector.
Okay, thank you. Across the entire economy, you will not point out one sector of the economy where government participation has produced results. Government ran NITEL, and up to 2001, this country only had 400,000 telephone lines. When you brought in the private sector in 2001, in the past 20 years, we have gone from 400,000 telephone lines to over 90 million telephone lines. Take any sector. We had only 4 banks in this country operating as inefficiently, even with the backing of their home offices. Union Bank, then First Bank, and so on and so forth. up to 1989.
Yes.
Now you liberalize and privatize the sector, and today the whole plethora of 26 banks in Nigeria, and I'm talking about those 4 banks at that time, could even support a $10 million transaction. Today, 2 banks can do a $500 million transaction. I'm just using these examples to state, and I said it here in this book, My Entrepreneurship Journey, that the efficiency of our economy has largely depended on the reluctance or the ease, whichever way, with which government has withdrawn from every sector. Every sector that government has had the political will to pull out of and effectively manage entry of the private sector, that sector has done well. The oil and gas sector, because of its contribution to forex earnings, because of the sheer power of the oil and gas sector as a major revenue earner, every political group, every leadership we have had has been reluctant to pull out of that sector. So it is government's participation in the sector that has actually hindered the growth of the sector. So you talk about refineries. The refineries have not worked for 20 years. People don't know. They really haven't worked for 20 years, okay? And because it remained a government monopoly and government was also setting prices, it was impossible for the private sector to come in because you couldn't get the required debt, project financing to build a refinery when the only competitor is government monopoly. The fact that Dangote took the plunge was because he had a large enough business whose balance sheet can fund it. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to borrow. Now, you are going to see, with private sector coming in the next 2 years, without government refineries, we're going to have a refining capacity over 800,000 barrels a day. And just like when Airtel and MTN and Co came in, nobody remembered that Nitel was dead. Yeah. It's going to be the same way. Once the private sector refineries start functioning very well in the next 1 year, nobody will remember to ask any question what's happening to NNPC refineries. Whether they function or they sell them or they're dead, you and I will not even remember. But that's how the participation of government in the refining sector has killed the sector up to this point. So the parts of the oil and gas sector where government has refused to pull out of are the parts of the sector that are performing very badly.
Interesting.
Yes.
Now let's go back to talk about the book, Austin Avuru, A Safe Pair of Hands, My Entrepreneurship Journey, and of course, Politics, Economics, and the Nigerian Petroleum Industry, the 3rd edition. Let's quickly talk about where these can be found, and then we can also focus on A Safe Pair of Hands. Did it take a lot of distraction from being a family man? Did it take a lot of what did you dedicate, in order to build Seplat into where it currently is? It must have taken a lot from you as a person.
I think that naturally, I believe in proper governance structures. I really do believe in it by heart. And both in setting up and running Platform Petroleum and in setting up and running Seplat, I was simply doing what I believed in, and I enjoyed doing it. The problem then will be how do you manage those who become obstacles when you try to place those structures. Those were the only challenges. Otherwise, setting up and running these companies weren't such a big deal because you were doing what you believed in. A few people have done it. You look at the banking sector, you take Stanbic IBTC, you take GT Bank. These are institutions that have been set up. The founders are gone. They're still running efficiently on the structure that they set up. Those are the things you will look at. It doesn't matter the sector you go to, you will find out, as I said in the book, I have what I call the 30-year rule. I'm always reluctant to praise people. Let's wait for 20 years. Then you will know whether what is set up.
Not very many businesses.
Correct. And that's where you will know whether it's set up, whether that institution is running on an individual or running on a structure. If it's running on a structure, we will tell after 20 years. Yes.
Olive.
So many things have been said here. I'm excitedly looking forward to looking through these books. But a very quick question. I think I'll focus on my entrepreneurship journey. Which would you say was your most interesting chapter to write?
I think is the chapter on running a listed company. Because, after we listed this company, just 3.5 years after founding, we listed the company in London and in Lagos. That in itself was a momentous journey. But we went out to list the company not because we were looking for money, because we actually had money at that time. We needed a platform that will enable us save the company from ourselves. So you list a company on the London Stock Exchange, you have already established a certain minimum governance standard expectation because you are being watched by the London Stock Exchange, much more rigid than the Nigerian Stock Exchange. That's why we went there. Now, and therefore there are things you cannot do, even if you wanted to. And so that provided us a platform. And that's why you're seeing that even with the wranglings you saw recently, no effect on the performance of the company. Because there are certain standards of operating standards, structure, governance standards, and in fact, even transparency in your operations. And so from a Nigerian background, you then set up a company and list it on the stock exchange. And then you are running that company and you find out, oh, wow, these things that are supposed to be privileges I will enjoy from a company I founded are things I cannot do. For instance, the issue about related party transactions. It was easier for somebody that has no relationship with me to get a job, get a contract, go through the process and get a contract in Seplat than somebody who is known to me. If somebody who is related to me, like my spouse or my sister, gets a contract, even through a rigorous contracting process, the total value of what to pay for that contract must appear in our annual report as a related party transaction. And people who are reading it are not going to go through the details of how he or she got a contract. All we're saying is, Austin Avuru's sister got a $10 million contract. That's what you see as headline, even if he was the best bidder. So how do you manage a situation where elsewhere, those were privileges you would have enjoyed? People who know you, you pick up their phone and think they'll get a job from your company because they know you. It's the reverse in this case. People who know you will find it more difficult. So running a listed company it required a lot of discipline. In fact, at some point I said, I created a monster that I was finding it difficult to manage. It was easier for me to deal with my former company, Platform Petroleum, that was easier to manage relationships if I asked anything of them than with Seplat. I think that's the most exciting chapter there. But it's very telling. The message is clear. Even for a company that is not listed, if you are running your own private company owned 100% by you, if you run it by the same governance standards that we are trying to preach here, the same governance standards that the London Stock Exchange will impose on you, you will see the results after 20 years.
Absolutely. Austin Avuru, thank you so much. I truly enjoyed the conversation. And of course, there's so much that needs to be learned from either of these books. And the books, once again, are My Entrepreneurship Journey, A Safe Pair of Hands, and of course, Learning About Politics, Economics, and the Nigerian Petroleum Industry. These books can be found at your nearest bookstore all across Lagos and across Nigeria and in other parts of the continent. Thank you very much for your time this morning. I truly do appreciate it.
Thank you very much.